Hello, my name is Joe Murphy. Obviously, you know that now because this is the second video you've looked at, and here we are. We're talking about definitions today. The objectives of this course are going to be basically after studying this unit, you should be able to understand the meaning of the term accessible when applied to wiring methods and when applied to equipment. You should be able to identify accessible equipment that is not readily accessible, and you should be able to accurately evaluate a location as to accessible, readily accessible, or not readily accessible. Now, you need to be able to identify equipment classified as appliances. You need to be familiar with the four categories of branch circuits and be able to list their differences. Be able to distinguish between the difference between terms enclosed and guarded. You should be able to determine whether a load is continuous or non-continuous and know the difference between branch circuit conductors and feeder conductors. Now you also need to understand the terminology used associated with grounded and grounding, know the maximum distance permitted for within site situations, be able to give examples of damp, dry, and wet locations, and be able to determine what conductors are neutral conductors. You need to be able to comprehend the electrical vocabulary associated with the word service, be familiar with what constitutes a separately derived system, understand that the authority having jurisdiction, again, we've seen that earlier in Unit 1, AHJ, could provide special permission, which is defined as written consent. Okay, and we're going to get into definitions, but there's one thing, Article 100 does not include common, defined, general, or technical terms from related codes and standards. Normally, only terms used in two or more articles are defined in Article 100. Other terms are defined within the article in which they appear, but may be referenced in Article 100. Part 100 of Article 100, Part 1 of Article 100 contains definitions to be applied wherever the terms are used throughout the NEC. Part 2 contains definitions applicable only to the parts of articles specifically covering installations and equipment operating at over 600 volts nominal. Definitions: accessible as applied to wiring methods. Access can be gained without damaging the building structure or finish. Not permanently closed in by a building's structure or finish. Accessibility is applied to equipment not guarded by locked doors or elevators, and readily accessible, capable of being reached quickly. Readily accessible means capable of being reached quickly for operational renewal or inspections, without having to take action such as to use tools to climb over or remove obstacles or to resort to portable ladders. Readily accessible to wiring lumens is not required in most cases. Access can be gained through the use of ladders, scaffolding, etc. Conductors within junction box of recessed luminaries can be accessed by removing part of the luminaire, such as trims, lamps, internal shelves, etc. Arc fault circuit interrupter. This is a device intended to provide protection from effects of arc faults by recognizing characteristics unique to arcing and by functioning to de-energize the circuit when an arc is detected. The attachment plug, that's just a regular old plug. It's an attachment plug. Cap plug is a device that, when inserted into a receptacle, establishes connection between the conductors of the attached flexible cord and the conductors permanently connected to the receptacle. Bonded or bonding. And then you also have bonding conductor or jumper, the supply side and the equipment. When metal parts are required to be electrically connected, a reliable conductor, or what they call a bonding jumper, is installed, and this guarantees the required electric conductivity. A supply-side bonding jumper is a conductor installed on the supply side of a service or within a service equipment enclosures that ensures the required electrical conductivity between metal parts required to be electrically connected. Okay, the main bonding jumper is the connection at the service between the grounded circuit conductor and the equipment grounding conductor. These are all covered in Article 100. Main bonding jumpers must be made of copper or other corrosion-resistant material. A wire, bus, screw, or similar suitable conductor is acceptable as a main bonding jumper. And bonding jumper equipment. An equipment bonding jumper is a connection between two or more portions of the equipment grounding conductor. You have types of appliances. You have individual, general purpose, and multi-wire. An appliance branch is a circuit supplies energy to one or more outlets for the purpose of connecting appliances. These circuits include the connection of luminaries unless they are part of the appliance being connected. Branch circuit conductors found between a circuit's final overcurrent protection device, such as the last fuse or circuit breaker, and the circuit's outlet, is called a branch circuit. Article 100 defines branch circuits are divided into four categories. You have appliance, general purpose, individual, and multi-wire. Now you have concealed, that's rendered inaccessible by a building structure. Receptacles or multi-wire branch circuits. You have conduit body, continuous load, and devices. These carries or controls electrical energy. Now, a general purpose branch circuit supplies two or more receptacles or outlets for lighting appliances. Now, a multi-wire branch circuit consists of two or more ungrounded hot conductors that have a voltage between them. So you would be taking, say you're putting in a 240 or 220 circuit, 240 nowadays, and you'd have two hot legs with no neutral between them, so you should have 240 volts. But if you go between the neutral and one of the legs, you should have 120 on each side. Each leg in neutral should give you 120. They add up to 240. All conductors of a multi-wire branch circuit must originate from the same panel or similar distribution equipment. There must be only one grounded neutral conductor, and there must be an equal voltage between it and the ungrounded conductor of that circuit. Now, concealed, that means rendered inaccessible by structure or finishing of the building. Okay, conductors in concealed raceways, even though they still may be accessible by withdrawing them, are still considered concealed. A multi-wire receptacle circuit consists of one or more duplex receptacles, one or more multiple receptacles, two or more single receptacles, or combination thereof. A duplex receptacle can be supplied by two branch circuits by removing, there's a tab there where you can actually have two circuits on the same, and this is used for, say you have a light switch that controls a lamp, and then you want power to not be controlled by that switch, so you have the switch coming in on one conductor, and then maybe the regular branch circuit would be to the other outlet on that receptacle. Here they have switch-controlled split-wire duplex receptacles are sometimes installed in lieu of a lighting outlet. One half of the duplex receptacle is controlled by a wall switch, while the other half is a typical receptacle. Split-wire receptacle receiving power from a single source, one breaker, or one fuse is not a multi-wire receptacle. Now, conduit body is a separate portion of a conduit or tubing system providing access to the interior of the system through removable covers at a junction of multiple sections or at a terminal point on the system article. These are some pictures of those, what they're talking about. You have larger boxes that are cast, and a single conduit is not permitted or is sole support for these metal boxes. You should have two, and it shows it right here. Okay. A continuous load having the maximum level of current sustained for 3 hours or more is referred to as a continuous load. Article 100, office lighting is an example of a continuous load. And a device is a unit of electrical system other than a conductor that carries or controls energy as its principal function, and a receptacle or a light switch. Now, effective ground fault path. I mean, ground faults can cause, if you have a grounding issue or you have stray voltages, it can give people shocks and cause other issues. In the old days when we only had 2-wire circuits, that used to be a common issue. You would be able to touch 2 appliances and you'd actually get a little current through you because of the grounds. You were grounding both devices together. Since they weren't grounded because there was no ground, they were all isolated in a sense. An effective ground fault circuit path is an intentionally constructed low-impedance electrically conductive path designed and intended to carry current under ground fault conditions from the point of a ground fault on a wiring system to the electrical supply source. Essentially, that's giving you eventually, if it's done properly, it's going to go all the way out to your grounding rod by your service box. It's where everything gets grounded. That's earth ground. So electrical equipment and wiring and other electric conductor material likely to become energized shall be installed in a manner that creates a low impedance circuit facilitating the operation of the overcurrent device or grounding fault detector. It shall be capable of safely carrying the maximum ground fault current likely to be imposed on it from any point on the wiring system where a ground fault may occur to the electrical supply source. The earth shall not be considered as an effective ground fault path. Okay, we're going to talk about enclosed. Equipment, conductors, etc. surrounded by a case, housing, fence, or walls that prevent persons from accidentally energizing parts or are referred to as enclosed. You have examples or panels located within cabinets or cutout boxes are considered to be enclosed. Electrical equipment installed within the perimeter of a fence or similar area qualifies as enclosed. And then conductors are also considered enclosed when installed in panels, wireways, raceways, etc. Now we're going to talk about enclosure, and that's any case, housing, apparatus, fence, or wall surrounding an installation designed to prevent personnel from accidentally contacting energized parts or to protect the equipment from physical damage serves as an enclosure. This is also in 100, Article 100. Now a feeder, it consists of all the circuit conductors located between the service equipment, the source of the separately derived system or another power supply source, and the final branch circuit over current device. I have a picture of that on page 19. If you're interested in looking at something like that, it shows the main source, and then you got feeders, and they feed the panels, sub-panels, over to where you run your breakers for your circuits. Festoon lighting is a string of outdoor lights suspended between 2 points. Overhead conductors for festoon lighting shall not be smaller than 12 gauge unless supported by a messenger wire. Now, the messenger wire will maintain some of the strain relief. In other words, it will hold the conductors and the light fixtures up without having to put a strain on the wires. Now, a fitting is an accessory such as a lock nut or a bushing whose functionality is primary mechanical rather than electrical. Now we have grounded and grounded conductor. A grounded conductor is a system or a circuit conductor that is intentionally grounded. Grounded or grounding is defined as being connected to the ground or to a conductive body that extends the ground connection. And then ground is defined as earth, okay, an earth ground as opposed to being grounded. And it's two different terms of grounded. Now, you have grounded electrode conductor, grounding electrode, grounding conductor is EGC. The grounded electrode conductor is a conductor used to connect the system grounded conductor or the equipment to a grounding electrode or to a point on the grounding electrode system. A grounding electrode is a conducting object that establishes a direct connection to the earth. If you look at the page 21, you can see the conductor is the basically letter G, which is the grounding electrode conductor, is a conductor used to connect the system grounding connector or the equipment to a grounding electrode. And then the grounding electrode is a conducting object that establishes a direct connection with the earth. That's your 6-foot or 8-foot grounding rod that you put in the ground. And essentially this grounding electrode conductor is the conductor that goes from that rod that you put in the ground up to your service box. Okay, and that's essentially what they're talking about there. Now, guarded is defined as covered, shielded, fenced, enclosed, or otherwise protected by means of suitable covers, casings, barriers, walls, screens, mats, or platforms, effectively removing the likelihood of approach or contact by persons or objects. Panels having doors or covers are considered guarded. Now we're going to talk about insight from within sight. The NEC terms insight from, with sight from, or within sight, etc. applies to equipment indicated that the specified items of equipment are visible and are not more than 50 feet apart. This is covered in Article 100. A motor disconnection means must be located in sight from the motor location as required by Article 430.102 subsection B. Now, a lighting outlet is an outlet intended for direct connection of a lamp holder or luminaire, and this is called a lighting outlet. This is an example of sight, insight from within, sight from within sight. And so you have to have clear sight of the object that you're trying to disconnect. And we have some more definitions. We have location, and we can have dry, wet, and damp. Okay, we're going to talk about damp first. Those are locations that are subject to moderate degrees of moisture. Damp locations are those protected from weather and are not subject to saturation from water or liquids. And dry locations are those that are not normally subject to moisture except on a temporary basis, such as a building under construction. Wet installations in any of the following categories are wet locations: underground within concrete slabs in masonry directly contacting the earth. In areas subject to saturation, water or other liquids are locations and unprotected from the weather. And we're going to talk about luminaire. Again, we've talked about this in Unit 1, but it's a term definition. Luminaire is a complete lighting unit consisting of a light source such as a lamp or lamps together with parts designated to position the light source and to connect it to power supply. It may also include parts to protect the light source, ballast, or distribute the light. A lamp holder itself is not a luminaire. Multi-outlet assembly, a surface flush or freestanding raceway designed to hold conductors and receptacles. Whether it's assembled in the field or at a factory, is called a multi-outlet assembly. A neutral conductor is defined as a conductor connected to the neutral point of the system that is intended to carry current under normal conditions. Now you have you have some drawings here where you have one here with it's a Y connected three-phase circuit with a four-wire system. Here you have all three phases connected in the center with your neutral in the center tap. And basically anywhere you go here, you're going to have 120 between this neutral and this phase, 120 here and 120 there, equal legs. Okay. The neutral point is a common point on a Y connection in a polyphase system. And then the neutral point is a midpoint on a single phase three-wire system, which is right here. And that's a delta wire, three-phase. This is a Y. And the neutral point is a midpoint of a single-phase portion of a three-phase delta system, right here. And the neutral point is a midpoint of a three-wire direct current here, or down here, DC you're talking about. At the neutral point of the system, the vector sum of the nominal voltages from all other phases within the system that utilize neutral with respect to the neutral point is zero potential. There should be no potential between, if you have a chassis ground and then you have the neutral system, you shouldn't have a voltage between those two. You took your meter and put it between a case where you put your ground, your green wires, you put your white wire, and you put your meter on the terminal block, where all your neutrals connect in your service box, or even in your feeder sub box. You shouldn't have a potential. If you do, you got a problem. An outlet, it's a point in the wiring system from which current is taken to supply utilization equipment known as an outlet. Now, an overcurrent protection device on branch circuit. A branch circuit overcurrent protection device is a device capable of providing protection for service, feeder, and branch circuits and equipment over the full range of overcurrents between its rated current and its interrupting rating. Such devices are provided with interrupted ratings appropriate for the intended use, but no less than 5,000 amperes. This is in Article 100. Now, a plenum, that's the space above a suspended ceiling used for environmental air handling purposes. It's a compartment or chamber having one or more attached air ducts and forming part of the air distribution system. It is also known as a plenum. Now, a receptacle, you have single and multiple. A connecting device installed at an outlet for the purpose of an attachment plug is a receptacle. A single receptacle is a single contact device with no other contact device on the same yoke. A multi-receptacle is a device consisting of two or more receptacles. Now, a separately derived system. Article 450 contains provisions for transformers. A separately derived system is an electrical source other than a service having no direct connections to circuit conductors of any other electrical source other than those established by grounding and bonding connections. Now, an alternative AC source, such as an on-site generator, is not a separately derived system if the grounded conductor is solidly interconnected to the service-supplied system's grounding conductor. So, it's essentially still connected to the system, even if it's only the grounded system, but it's not connected until you throw the switch for the hot side. Now, service is the conductors and equipment that deliver energy from the servicing utility to the wiring system of the premises are called service. This is in Article 100. Service conductors, the conductors from the service point to the service disconnect are known as the service conductors. Okay? And conductors or equipment are also defined as service where receiving power underground. Overhead service conductors are the overhead conductors between the service point and the first point of connection to the service entrance. Conductors at the building or other structure. Service conductors include overhead service conductors, underground service conductors, overhead system service entrance conductors, and underground systems, service entrance conducting. Now, service drop is the overhead conductors between the utility electrical supply system and the service point. Now you have service equipment is the equipment, usually circuit breakers, switches, fuses, and accessories necessary to constitute the main control and cutoff that is connected to the load end of the service conductors to a building or other structure or otherwise designated area. Now, service lateral. This is an underground conductors between utility electric supply systems and the service point. The service point is the point of the connection between the facilities of the servicing utility and the premises wiring. It's right here. It's a service drop. The service point is right in this area right here, where they're connected. The service point can be described as the point of demarcation between where the service utility ends and the premise wiring begins. The servicing utility generally specifies the location of the service point based on the conditions of service. Usually they'll tell you, okay, we need that head put out on the southeast corner of the building, so then you have to put your breakers and run the main. That's going to make a difference of how you wire the house up. Special permission and authority having jurisdiction. Special permission is written consent of authority having jurisdiction, which is AHG. This is in Article 100. And AHJ is the organization, office, or individual responsible for enforcing the requirements of a code or standard, or for approving equipment, materials, an installation, or a procedure. And they can grant exceptions by doing written permission to those issues you may be having. Now I'm going to summarize. This code is intended to be interpreted the same no matter who is reading the code. Consistent interpretations require we all understand the language and definitions found in Article 100. And we will take the time to scan through Article 100 and refer back to it periodically as we work our way through the code. There are going to be times when you may have to look up for a definition for some of the work that you're doing, because there may be times when you may be trying to figure out, is this considered an enclosure, or is this a obstructed way? You know, do I have to do within site requirements for this installation? You know, you just have to define it, and just as long as you understand the definitions, you shouldn't have a problem. Again, if you have any problems with this, or if you have any questions, just email me at jmurphy@trcc.edu. After this video, you probably want to take some time and scan through the book again, and then go do the Unit 2 quiz.